Ford's own boss drives a Chinese car to work every single day. He did not buy it from a dealer. His team shipped 5 Chinese electric cars across the ocean and tore them apart bolt by bolt in a lab in Michigan. What they found changed how Ford builds cars. This is why Western automakers are copying BYD right now. And the real story goes much deeper than one car. The man behind the wheel is Jim Farley, the CEO of Ford. About 18 months ago, he told his team to find the best electric cars being built in China and bring them to America. He picked one for himself, a Xiaomi SU7. Xiaomi is a phone company. The SU7 was its first car ever, launched in 2024. Farley liked it so much he kept driving it for over a year. He also flew to Australia to test a Chinese pickup truck called the Shark 6 against a Ford Ranger and a Toyota Hilux. He said he still does not know how they build it so cheap. Back home, his engineers took the Chinese cars apart piece by piece. Farley brought in Doug Field, an engineer who used to work at Tesla and Apple, to look at Ford's own systems. Field's answer was blunt. He said Ford's tools were about 25 years behind, not the car. The tools, the software, the whole way of building. That is the moment everything changed inside Ford. To understand why one company could put a 100-year-old giant 25 years behind, you need to go back to 1995. A young engineer named Wang Chuanfu borrowed $40,000 from his cousin and opened a small workshop in Shenzhen. He made batteries for phones. Within a few years, he was supplying Motorola and Nokia. By 2003, his company was the biggest battery maker on Earth. That same year, he did something that made his own investors furious. He bought a failing state-owned car factory. Wang had a simple idea. He believed the most important part of an electric car was not the engine, it was the battery. And nobody knew batteries better than him. That single decision built the company that Ford is now studying like a textbook. Here is the number that explains almost everything. In an electric car, the battery can make up 40% of the total cost. Whoever controls the battery controls the price of the whole car. For years, Western car companies bought their batteries from outside suppliers. They paid whatever price the market gave them. BYD went the other way. It builds its own battery, called the Blade battery, using a cheaper chemistry called LFP. That alone cuts cost and weight. BYD did not stop there. It bought stakes in lithium mines in Chile and parts of Africa. So it owns part of the raw material chain too. Now watch what Ford is doing in response. Ford is building its own LFP battery plant in Michigan. Farley has openly said he is learning from BYD's playbook. Volkswagen and Porsche are moving the same direction, trying to build more of their own batteries instead of buying them. But copying a battery is the easy part. The harder thing BYD does is build almost everything itself. Its own chips, its own motors, its own electronics. Most car companies buy these parts from hundreds of outside suppliers. One industry executive said competing with BYD now means competing with an entire system, not just a car. For 40 years, the Western car industry ran on the opposite idea. Build what you are best at, buy the rest from someone else, and trust that the rest will always be cheap and available. It worked for decades. Then in 2021, a global chip shortage froze car factories all over the world. BYD makes its own chips, so it kept building cars while Ford and other companies had to shut down lines and wait. That single event changed how every boardroom in Detroit and Wolfsburg thinks about supply chains. There is also a reason none of this happens on Chinese soil in America. The United States placed a 100% tariff on Chinese electric cars, which blocks BYD from selling directly to American buyers. So instead of competing head-on, Western companies are choosing two paths. One path is building their own version from scratch. Ford's answer is a $5 billion bet called the Universal EV platform, starting with a mid-size electric pickup built in Kentucky, aimed at a price around $30,000. Farley compared it to the original Model T. The other path is simpler. Buy into a Chinese company directly. Stellantis, which owns Jeep, Fiat, and Ram, took a stake in a Chinese EV maker called Leap Motor, and now builds its cars on a production line in Zaragoza, Spain. Meanwhile, BYD opened its own factory in Hungary with room for 300,000 cars a year. None of this comes free. Volkswagen is cutting close to 50,000 jobs in Germany and targeting almost $7 billion in yearly savings. Ford has already booked billions in losses tied to its EV push. This is why executives rarely use the word copying. They call it learning. or benchmarking, while quietly rebuilding entire divisions around a rival's blueprint. But before anyone hands BYD a trophy, there are real cracks worth watching. A research firm called GMT Research claimed BYD's real debt could be close to 323 billion yuan, almost 8 times what the company officially reports, hidden through slow payments to suppliers. In Brazil, labor officials accused a BYD factory construction site of holding 163 workers in conditions they compared to slavery. Ferrari built one SUV, the Purosangue, and priced it near $400,000. In July 2026, a Chinese automaker called Voyah launched an electric SUV that looks almost the same, costs a small fraction of that price, and pulled in over 10,000 orders in 1 hour. That is not luck. That is a company quietly killing the one thing Ferrari has always sold better than the car itself: the feeling that nobody else can have one. Voyah is not a startup. It belongs to Dongfeng, one of the biggest car makers in China. For decades, Dongfeng did not build its own cars. It built other people's cars. It ran joint factories with Nissan and with Peugeot and Citroën, the brands owned by a company called Stellantis. Dongfeng poured the metal, ran the lines, and shipped finished cars with someone else's badge on the front. The profits went back to Japan and Europe. Dongfeng kept the paycheck and the silence. But every factory floor teaches something. Every engine Dongfeng built for Nissan was a lesson in how a good motor is put together. Every Peugeot was a lesson in ride and handling. Nobody in Europe or Japan thought much about what a factory partner learns after 30 years of watching. In 2020, Dongfeng stopped watching and started building. It launched Voyah, its own premium electric brand, with no foreign badge and no foreign permission needed. 5 years later, Voyah dropped its newest car, the Passion S, and the internet lost its mind. The shape is long, low, and wide, with a sloped roof and a wide stance that people online keep comparing to the Ferrari Purosangue. The price makes that comparison sting. Voyah priced the Passion S from 229,900 yuan to 309,900 yuan, which is about $33,800 to $45,600. A Ferrari Purosangue starts near $400,000 and often sells for over $500,000 once options are added. Same rough shape, same idea of a fast luxury SUV, and a price gap of nearly 10 times. Here is where it gets serious. The top Passion S trim runs 2 electric motors making a combined 637 horsepower. It hits 100 km/h in 4.5 seconds. Depending on the battery size, it drives between 630 and 740 kilometers on a single charge under Chinese testing rules. That is enough to drive across small countries without stopping. Now hold that number in your head, because there is a bigger one coming. Inside, the Passion S runs Huawei's Changchun Ads 5.0 driving system, built with 4 LiDAR units mounted on the car. LiDAR is a sensor that scans the road using laser light. And having 4 of them on one car puts the Passion S ahead of almost every luxury SUV sold in Europe or the United States, where most cars use 1 LiDAR unit or none at all. Ferrari does not offer this kind of self-driving hardware on the Purosangue at any price. When Voyah opened orders for the Passion S, it did not ease into the market. In the first 60 minutes, the company logged 10,347 pre-orders. That is not a slow build over a launch weekend. That is thousands of buyers deciding within minutes that they wanted this car instead of waiting to see reviews. Voyah built the Passion S to compete directly with another hot Chinese SUV, the Xiaomi SU7. And the order numbers suggest buyers are taking the fight seriously. But numbers alone did not make this car famous. A stunt did. Before the launch, Voyah filmed the Passion S driving into a closed tunnel in Wuhan, climbing the curved wall, going fully upside down along the ceiling, and coming back down the other side on the road. The car hit the ramp at around 130 km/h with 16 degrees of steering lock. Voyah said a few kilometers per hour slower and the car would not have completed the loop. This was not a random idea. It was a direct recreation of a famous Mercedes-Benz commercial from 2010, where an SLS AM was shown doing the same upside-down loop. An ad that became controversial once people learned a stunt car and extra rigging were involved. By restaging that exact stunt, Voyah was making a statement without saying a single word: we can do what the legacy brands only faked. Here comes the twist that ties the whole story together. Stellantis, the company that owns Peugeot and Citroën, has agreed to bring Voyah into European showrooms. Read that again. Stellantis ran joint factories with Dongfeng for decades, using Dongfeng's labor and land to build Peugeot and Citroëns for European buyers, while Dongfeng stayed in the background with no name on the car. Now the roles have flipped. Ferrari has not said a public word about the Passion S. It does not need to. The numbers are already doing the talking. The bigger question is not whether Voyah copied Ferrari's shape. It is what Ferrari does now that the company it never noticed for 30 years just landed its own car in Europe, on the same roads, at the same dealer group that once quietly depended on Dongfeng's factories to survive. That answer has not been written yet, and every automaker in Europe is waiting to